We kick off our season review by looking at Mikael Granlund. And if he can just beat Tomas Hertl, at least for now.
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast covering your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, contributor at San Jose Hockey Now. I want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Proudly part of the Locked On Network, we cover your team every day. And if you want to be an everyday, all you have to do is just follow wherever you get podcasts, or you can watch this on YouTube as well. And like I said, today we're going to be kicking off some of our player reviews from the season, talking about the big players on the Sharks, and kind of what the big question that lingers for them going into this offseason and kind of moving forward. So we're going to start with Mikael Granlund, the Sharks' leading point scorer. And we're going to be talking we're going to kind of look at what he did this season, discuss if he can be a Tomas Hertl replacement, and then kind of talk about what's next for Granlund. So before we do all that, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. So let's get into it with Granlund and his season review. We'll start by looking at his numbers, dig into some of the analytics, and kind of parsing through what the Sharks got out of Granlund. So, of course, Mikael Granlund, who the Sharks acquired as part of the Erik Karlsson trade. He had a very nice season, to be honest, especially compared to what we expected, even myself included, out of Granlund, and what we got as Sharks fans. So Granlund, who has 1 year left on his deal at $5 million, this is going into, into next year. So the 24-25 season. This year he played 69 games. Very nice. Had 12 goals, 48 assists for nice, even 60 points, 134 shots on goal, averaged 20.58 of average ice time. Corsi 41.98. So that was his shot attempts every time he was on the ice. The Sharks attempted basically 42% of these shots. Goals for 45.74%. So basically, whenever he was on the ice, the Sharks scored 45% of the almost 46% of the goals. Both those Corsis at the 5v5. As we go through some of the other Sharks players, you'll notice all these Corsis are in the low, like in the 40s. So just mentally prepare yourself, as this team was constantly outshot night in and night out. So just some kind of information, just kind of comparison for Granlund with his stats. So fourth time he's ever hit 60 points, first time since he did it in the 21-22 season when he played for Nashville. That year he had 64 points in 80 games. This year, remember, he only played 69 games and had 60 points. Granlund, who hasn't been much of a goal scorer, especially after being traded after leaving Minnesota and going to Nashville, seen his goal production go down, right? And I think kind of putting him in that 10 to 15 bucket for goals every year is pretty fair, and that's where he ended up. Where his kind of production came from this year, most of it was on the assist rate. He had 48 assists, 25 even strength, 22 on the power play. That was the second most power play assists he's had again since that 21-22 season. So really, and we know with the Sharks that a lot of their scoring came at on the power play this season. So his time on ice, again, almost 21 minutes. That was his highest since that 21-22 season, where he had 20 minutes and 25 seconds. Those are the only two seasons where he's had over 20 minutes a night. So Granlund was the workhorse for the Sharks, right? Playing all situations. Power play, he was power play one, played a ton of penalty kill, was the first line center for the Sharks. And I think you have to kind of, Sharks got their money's worth out of him this year, and kind of the usage out of him. So let's continue to look at some of his stats here. So, or his analytics. So Over at The Athletic, they kind of have like their player cards, basically kind of looks at their offensive rating, their defensive rating. Again, with all the Sharks defensive ratings, you have to put kind of the context of just how poor this team was, especially when you have a minus 150 goal differential, right? Negative course, they're getting outshot every night, and getting outshot, or at least shot attempts. Like, everybody is going to be like, all the defensive ratings are going to be poor for the Sharks. You just have to kind of keep that in mind as we continue to go through this series. But looking at his offense, though, so this projects him over 80 games. Goals projected at 15, assists 55, 70. So if he kind of played a full season, he probably would have been a 70-point player for the Sharks. Just keep that number kind of in the back of your head here. Expected goals, like, again, all the expected goals and stuff like that are going to be poor for the Sharks just because of just how bad this team was defensively. So looking at the evolving hockey numbers, first line minutes for Granlund, played 1,446 minutes in 69 games this year. 76 percentile offense, 2 percentile defense. Again, Granlund, not that poor defensively. Like, Granlund, if you go back and look at his other years, like, he's a much better defender. And again, you have to kind of, something as I've learned, as we've got, as kind of continuing my hockey coverages. Yes, analytics are nice. I love analytics, but you have to keep them in context, right? This team, again, everybody's defensive numbers are bad on this team because of just how poor they were defensively. So total goals above replacement, though, like, you can look at the offense there, and Mikael Granlund drove offense for this team. He was goals above replacement, expected goals above replacement. He did a good job with those power play offense. He was, you saw once Granlund got in and kind of got healthy and took over on the power play was immediately better when it was running through Mikael Granlund, right? As him kind of being the trigger man or the point man on the power play and creating offense for everybody else. And like I said, Mikael Granlund, 5v5 even strength. He played over 1,000 minutes. He was basically 15 minutes a night even strength, 3 minutes a night power play, 2.5 minutes a night shorthanded. Like, he was everywhere for the Sharks. What they needed from him. So it's kind of crazy if you go back and think about even Mikael Granlund this offseason, right? When before the Sharks acquired him, Pittsburgh was this close to buying him out. And it's just kind of funny how being put in a different situation, like with the Sharks, and yes, he wasn't going to play 21 minutes a night. Just how important he was. And you can see why the Sharks named him, why he was voted as the most valuable player for the Sharks. And you have to keep in mind, $5 million a season. That, I think, is something to just kind of keep in mind with this. Is you paid Mikael Granlund like $250,000 more than what the Sharks are paying Kevin LeBanc, and you got this type of production. And I think that's going to be the big question: is, can it be sustainable? Which I think it can be, especially with Mikael Granlund's usage. Kind of, he gets first crack at everything, and then and I think the question that we'll be discussing here in a minute is, can he replace Hertl, at least for the time being? So, but overall, though, I think you have to be, as a Sharks fan, pleasantly surprised, if not kind of overwhelmed with the production of Mikael Granlund and his role for this Sharks team. And, looking back, yes, Hoffman part didn't work out, right? Jan Ruda we'll discuss stuff, but getting a first round pick and getting Mikael Granlund and the season Mikael Granlund had, I know Erik Karlsson had himself a fine season, and then you're also unloading $10 million of Erik Karlsson. We'll see what happens with this pick, which is scheduled to be 14th overall in this draft. But like, you're getting solid solid early returns from the Penguins pick here. So we'll discuss though what's kind of the big question around Granlund is if he can continue to be the Hertl replacement right now. And then we'll kind of talk about what's next for Granlund kind of this offseason and heading into the 24-25 season, of course, way before free agency and draft related news and all that. So we'll start getting to that here in just 1 minute. GameTime now makes it super easy to buy tickets for Major League Baseball, which is great because if you want to go catch a Giants game or an A's game, GameTime, they actually lower the prices as we get closer to first pitch. They have killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from their seat, and their lowest price guarantee. GameTime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Maybe you want to go see a Giants-Dodgers game coming up this summer. And the great thing about it is you can actually see when you on GameTime, you can see what the views of your seats are going to look like. So you know you're going to get a great seat every time. And the thing I love the most is the all-in pricing. You know exactly what you're going to pay when you go to check out. No hidden fees, no surprises. When you go to check out, you know exactly what you're going to pay for your ticket. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL, LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Download the GameTime app. Lowest last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right. So the big question surrounding Granlund is, can he be the Tomas Hertl replacement for now? Right? We know the big guns are coming, right? Whether it's Will Smith or fingers crossed, Macklin Celebrini or Quentin Musty. Like the Sharks have exciting young players in the pipeline, but those guys aren't going to be, 60, 70 point players when they walk in the NHL, right? That's just not realistic. Look at it's a lot to ask for, right? Look at William Eklund, right? Great first season, 45 point player, basically. Playing 80 games this year. Mikael Granlund, 60-point player playing 69 games. And again, I keep that projection right. If he had played all 82 games, would have been a 70-point player. Again, beloved, I'm not trying to bury our beloved Czech Prince, Tomas Hertl, but here's Tomas Hertl's recent years and points. And again, points aren't everything, right? So this year, in 54 games spread between the Sharks and Vegas, 38 points. Last year, 79 games, 63 points. Year before that, in 82 games, 64 points. You have to go all the way back to the 2018-19 season when the Sharks were actually like good, where he had 74 points in 77 games. Like Mikael Granlund, different players, much different players. Like Hertl plays with a much more kind of, much more physicality. He's better, I think he's a better puck protector. I think he's better at kind of creating space for others. While Granlund is just a different player, right? Granlund is more of a pass first type of guy. He's able to kind of use his vision and good at protecting the puck, right? I think Granlund, it's fair to say, is a much more kind of craftier player. While I think Hertl is a much more physical player, right? They're different players, right? But they both get the job done. So right now, I know he's got 1 year left on his deal, but can Granlund just kind of be the Hertl replacement for right now as the 1C? And yes, he is the 1C right now, and that's because there's not much else to choose from, right? Logan Couture, who we're hoping is able to come back, but still, there's a lot of questions there that need to be answered before we can just kind of pencil Logan Couture in as your 1C. Will Smith, who, again, we're waiting on to find out if he's going to be a Shark or not this season, or, again, even if he does come, like, that's a lot to ask for a player a 19-year-old kid to kind of step in, and be that type of player, right? if and when Will Smith signs his ELC, we'll have realistic conversations about what is to kind of expect out of him, right? And again, I'm not expecting a 60-point player. I think that 60 points is a big plateau, especially when we talk about William Eklund. I think that 60 points is going to be a big plateau or big kind of milestone marker for Eklund when we get to that point. But I don't see why next year Granlund can't kind of be the same guy and be a 60 to 65 point player, potentially 70 point player if he's healthy. And you, like we talked about, hopefully have an infusion of talent, whether it's William Eklund taking, another step as we expect him to do. Zetterlund continuing his growth and development. You sign some free agents again. I'm not expecting Mike Grier to go wild with the checking account here. But there's going to, this next year's Sharks team needs to be better than the Sharks team that we saw this last year. And if they are, Granlund is going to, I think, continue to be an important piece to it. And I think the thing that really helped Granlund right here this year was what they did to kind of set him up for success, right? Granlund spent majority of the season playing with Zetterlund, and then Duclair before Duclair got traded. Duclair, speedy winger who knows how to shoot, right? And before the trade deadline, you saw Duclair's goal totals. If you remember, before the trade deadline or before the All-Star break, we had a conversation about Duclair. If you go way back, kind of mid-January, and it said Duclair was right around 8 or 9 goals. It's if Duclair can get to 15 before the trade deadline, that's that's a big thing for the Sharks to kind of boost his trade value. And you saw it, right? And with goal scorers, it's going to be kind of hit or miss, and they go through streaks. But Duclair went on a streak. A lot of it was Granlund kind of being a catalyst for Duclair there. Zetterlund, career high in goals, and he smashed that number this year, right? Led the Sharks with goals this season. Played with Zetterlund for a majority of the season. I think those type of players with Granlund, who again, not like Hertl, who can, be a bit more physical, but Granlund is much more subtler, right? Making that right pass to a guy like Duclair is able to finish it. And you saw Zetterlund, right? Got that dog in him, forechecking monster, big body, Swedish meatball. And Granlund did a great job getting him involved. And then Eklund, who's kind of a little bit of a glue guy on a line. If you need him to be the puck protector, he can be the puck protector, even though he's not, the biggest guy. And we saw with the Lund line at the end of the season, how well that line was carrying the Sharks offense at the end of the season there. So whatever the Sharks want to do, if they want to keep the Lund line in place going into next season, if they want to break it up and try to put another scoring winger, maybe a Daniel Gushin. Could you imagine Gushin getting set up by Granlund next year? Sign me up for that. Whatever you want to do, I think Granlund is going to be able to benefit because he is able to drive a line and make his line mates better. And you're doing it at a fraction of the cost of what you're paying Tomas Hertl for one more year. So I don't see why Granlund, if he remains healthy, can't be put in another position to succeed going into next season and be able to replicate kind of Hertl's production, if not surpass it. Because again, I just think that, yes, Hertl's a better player, right? Would you rather Tomas Hertl or Mikael Granlund? Of course, I want Tomas Hertl, but I think right now, again, for the Sharks, having a Granlund on a shorter contract who can kind of do 80% of what Hertl does, shorter contract, cheaper contract, that gives you more flexibility. I think that's the right decision. I think that's, again, why Tomas Hertl was traded to the Vegas Golden Knights. So we'll talk about what's next for Mikael Granlund as he enters the last year of his deal, and kind of what I expect for him going into next season, and what we can kind of expect for the 24-25 season. So we'll get to that here in just 1 minute. It's playoff time with the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose, bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that's safe, secure, and easy to use. So what are you waiting for? Visit fanduel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And if you want to make sure you're taking care of your family, you need to check out Polygenius. Is the country's leading online insurance marketplace. It saves you time and money so you can provide your family with a financial safety net starting today. With Polygenius, you can find life insurance policies that start at $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options even offer same-day approval and avoid unnecessary medical exams. Polygenius helps you compare your options from top companies, and their licensed team of experts is on hand to help talk you through it. The great thing about it is that they give unbiased advice from a licensed support team. There's no incentive for them to recommend one insurer over the other, so you can trust their guidance. They have thousands of 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilots from customers who found the best fit for their needs. So check out life insurance off your to-do list in no time with Polygenius. Head to polygenius.com/lockedonHL or click on the description in the free life insurance quotes and see how much you can save. That's polygenius.com/lockedonNHL. All right. What's next for Mikael Granlund, right? And again, we're way early into the process, right? We don't know again. Will Smith signs, if the Sharks or land the first overall pick, what they do in free agency. But it's pretty safe to assume Mikael Granlund is going to be the 1C for the team entering into next offseason. And there's going to be a lot of discussion and talk about if the Sharks should win and if the Sharks should trade Mikael Granlund. I think that's going to be kind of the big storyline for Granlund, right? 1 year left on his deal at $5 million. Still a little bit higher. And I think on most teams, Mikael Granlund is probably like a really high end 3C or, a 2C, maybe plays second line wing, right? Middle six type of guy on good teams, right? And taking advantage of an opportunity with the Sharks this year. And $5 million is nothing to sneeze at. And we know the cap's going to go up next year, right? We're projecting the cap to jump up by $4 million this offseason. So I wouldn't be surprised if teams keep tabs on Mikael Granlund, especially come the trade deadline. One thing, though, keep in mind, of course, the Sharks are out of the retention slots, right? They used up all 3 of their retention slots. Brent Burns, who will have 1 year left on his retention slot. That'll go away after the 24-25 season. You have Erik Karlsson, who will have 3 more years left on his, and then Tomas Hertl, who will have 5 more years left on his retention slot. So, but there's ways around that, right? You can find a third party to eat part of it, right? And kind of kick them a little bit for, it's usually like a 4th round pick, something like that, to kind of eat part of the contract. So if the Sharks retained, or the Sharks would not be able to retain anymore, but the Sharks could trade, a team could take on half of it, right? And then the third team, whoever's getting him, would only have to pay like $500,000 or $2.5 million. So ways to kind of get around it. But I think that's going to be the big thing, right? It is Mikael Granlund, as great as he's been for the Sharks. His future, though, is like I'm not running out to buy a Mikael Granlund jersey because maybe he's here, like maybe he makes it through next year, and then maybe you sign him to like another 1 year type of deal. Again, Mikael Granlund, who's 32, he's going to be 33. When does Mikael Granlund turn 33? He's getting up there in age here a little bit. So he turned 32 in February, so he'll be 33 basically by the trade deadline next year. Maybe like if you're going to keep Mikael Granlund on for, like, I'm signing 1 year deals with him, maybe a 2 year deal with him type of situation. But I think, though, he is going to be the Sharks' biggest trade piece next offseason, right? if you're still trying there, and they're very much in asset gathering mode. I know we are starting to we've exited the demolition phase and start to enter the build phase, as Mike Greer kind of called it. But Mikael Granlund is going to be the best player on one of the best players on the roster next year, and one of the most valuable trade pieces that you have. And again, for a team that is expected to be a bottom 5 team again next year, trading that and getting a quality asset, whether again, second round pick, third round pick, whatever it is, right? We are a long time from that discussion, but I think that's going to be the future for Mikael Granlund. Unfortunately for Sharks fans, because Mikael Granlund's been so far, he's been a great Shark, and I wouldn't be surprised next year if he wears a letter, because he wore a letter at the end of this season after Hertl was traded, right? I wouldn't be surprised if he wore a letter again next year for the Sharks, especially with kind of his mentorship for Zetterlund and Eklund, and kind of what he's meant for those guys and working with those guys, knowing how important they are. One, for him, right? Because if they play well, that usually means he's going to probably look better too. But two, kind of just right, passing on that knowledge for the next generation of players. So, but yeah, I fully expect Granlund to be the 1 seat, locked and loaded 1 seat, even if some young players arrive, prospects or whatever. I don't think Mike Greer and Quinn are going to just kind of give the keys to whether it's Celebrating or Smith or whoever as the 1 seed. Like I think they're going to try to put him in that kind of second line, and then as the season goes on and they kind of earn the role, like that's when you fully kind of expect that to happen. But I think though, having Mikael Granlund kind of be that bumper or that buffer for whoever, again, hopefully young players who are on the roster. And if they aren't, right, I think again, then you're just upping Mikael Granlund's trade value throughout the season, as you're hopefully kind of seeing that production stay relatively the same. And I think it's a really reasonable ask for it to be relatively the same, assuming Zetterlund's going to continue to his growth and development. Eklund, I think, is going to see a big jump from year 1 to year 2, full year 1 in the NHL to year 2. As he continues to kind of work on and hone his game. And then whatever else, other infusion of talent that is around the Sharks. And I don't think Mikael Granlund's role is going to decrease anytime soon. So that's going to be it for me today. We'll be back tomorrow. I think we'll probably do some more draft stuff here soon. So maybe we'll tomorrow let's talk about the Penguins pick, kind of look at some guys who could be there, maybe do some thought exercises on that. So make sure you guys are following wherever you get podcasts, and of course you can watch on YouTube as well. You can follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Locked On Sharks. You can follow me on Twitter at MyFryhole. Till tomorrow. Bye, friends.